We have officially received confirmation that Elden Ring's first expansion is, in fact, in development. It's going to be called Shadows of the Erdtree, and the accompanying image put out by From Software has blown open the floodgates of speculation. The image features a blackened tree crumbling with a hint of gold shining through the middle and pouring out onto the land below. The sky is blackened and the fields around are littered with ghostly tombs. The lone figures we see moving towards this tree are a familiar horned horse and a young boy with golden flowing hair. It seems those of us who have been hoping for the first true Elden Ring DLC to be focused around Miquella are getting our wish, and I personally could not be more excited. Let's take a minute to see what we can glean from this announcement, because while we've been given nothing but a name and an image, there are already some interesting things we can learn about where this DLC may be taking us. This is normally where we take a minute to ask you to join the channel and thank our community, but in the interest of getting right to the good stuff, we'll keep it short. If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe. Now let's talk about this announcement. The most glaringly important thing we learned from this image is that the Elden Ring DLC will be featuring Miquella. Many of us in the community have been saying from day one that the boy Melania described as the most fearsome Empyrean needs to be the focus of any future content, based solely on the many questions surrounding his character and the incredibly vague nature of his power. While cut content delves deep into Miquella's power over sleep and dreams, we were only given breadcrumbs to work with in the final release of Elden Ring. While some of us expected this turn of events, it's interesting that the announcement shows Miquella as a young boy, as we know his body has underwent some changes. Miquella's Haligtree was meant to break his curse of eternal youth and help him reach his full potential, but the process was disturbed when Mohg absconded with his cocoon. We can see a long arm that is broken free of the cocoon when we enter Mohg's chamber, which led us to believe that at least until he was interrupted, Miquella's plan was working. However, this announcement image shows Miquella as a child again, which to us could mean one of two things. Either time travel will be involved in this DLC, as many have speculated, or this will be taking place in the Land of Dreams. There is evidence that points in either direction, and we want to dive into both. First, the concept that this is set in the past. There are two main reasons to believe that this will be the case for the Shadows of the Erdtree expansion. First, we've already touched on. Miquella seems to be a child again. As we mentioned before, Miquella's process of breaking his curse seems to have permanently changed his body. If the cocoon within Mohg's chamber truly is Miquella, then the elongated arm and hand doesn't line up with the child we see in the image. The other reason this could take place in the past is tied to the steed Miquella is riding. As far as we know, Torrent is a one-of-a-kind creature in the Lands Between, tied to the ring that allows us to call him. And if Miquella is riding on Torrent's back, that means we may finally know who Torrent's original master was, none other than Miquella himself. Given Miquella's small frame and the fact that Torrent has always been a smaller horse when compared to the horses we see through the Lands Between, this revelation makes sense. Miquella has turned his back on the Golden Order and used his Haligtree as a haven for those persecuted by his family. There are creatures throughout the tree with ties to the primordial crucible, so Miquella would have no issue with Torrent, a spirit whose horns indicate a strong tie to a time before the Erdtree. If Miquella is riding Torrent, and he truly was Torrent's former master, this could mean that our Tarnished has not yet reached the Lands Between, and could confirm this DLC's setting being the past. Our second theory revolves around the DLC taking place in the Land of Dreams. This was a very popular topic in the community when discussing how Miquella could play into the overall story of Elden Ring post-game. It would be easy enough to include a dream world that could be accessed during our journey through the Lands Between, much like the painted worlds of Dark Souls or the Hunter's Nightmare from Bloodborne. The biggest reason we believe this DLC could take place in a dream is the inconsistencies in the image put out by FromSoft. Yes, the boy is clearly Miquella and the steed is clearly Torrent, but the tree off in the distance seems wrong. We know that the first place one's mind would go when looking at the image is a burned and dying Erdtree. However, we believe that this is actually Miquella's Haligtree. If you look at the distinctive curve in the tree, it much more closely resembles the portion of the Halig tree we can see when we first arrive on its branches. The Erd tree stands straight and tall, and while you could argue that after we burn it, the charred remains could bend, it seems much more likely that these twisted, gnarled branches are representative of the Halig tree. The gold pouring out from within doesn't have the light of grace. Perhaps this is actually unalloyed gold. If the DLC is taking place in the Land of Dreams, this could be what the Halig tree looks like after its master was torn from its branches. Within Miquella's dream, we can see his life's work, his tree, dying and crumbling, leaking the gold that was meant to break his curse. Nothing is 100% confirmed for this DLC, not even a release date, and while we believe the name Shadow of the Erd Tree could refer to Miquella and his Halig tree living under the shadows of the Erd Tree itself, growing to its full potential away from the eyes of the Golden Order, we could easily be wrong. It's fair to say that this DLC is one of the most anticipated pieces of work FromSoft has ever had on their plate, and this community cannot wait to get their hands on whatever they've cooked up next. Personally, as long as Miquella is heavily featured, I'm going to be ecstatic, because Miquella's backstory is probably the biggest piece of Elden Ring lore I've wanted to explore since my first playthrough of the game. It's only a matter of time before we learn more about this next chapter in the story of the Lands Between, and we can't wait for the next announcement. So what do you think will happen in our first true Elden Ring DLC? Will we face Miquella in combat, or will we be working alongside him to create a brighter future for the Lands Between? Is the tree we see in this announcement image a burned and destroyed Erd tree, or is this Miquella's Halig tree, bleeding its life force of unalloyed gold? Was Miquella the original owner of the spectral steed Torrent, or is his riding on Torrent's back simply an image meant to create hype for this new addition to the game? Hopefully all of these questions will be answered soon, so that we can dive even deeper into the lore of Elden Ring. We look forward to seeing you in future DLC-driven episodes of Elden Lore.